Hello everybody, and welcome back to yet another Draft League analysis. This time in the UNPL Season 5 Academy League, we are a part of the Naraha division. I'm Metamexis, your coach of the New York Metas, and this is my second time actually having to record this video, because the first time I forgot to have my audio on. Yes, I was talking into the mic for about 20 minutes, and didn't realize until 2 days later I had no audio. I was recording a thing from my secondary channel, Max and Aloe, where we cover movies and things like that. So before we get on to the draft analysis, don't forget to subscribe for more. Comment below your thoughts on the team, and who you think is going to do well this season. However, leading the charge for the New York Metas, we have Walking Wake. We were the second to last pick this division, so it was a bit of a fun thing to see that Walking Wake was available for the pick at near the end of round 1. This is a brutally aggressive and quite fast special attacking sweeper with a very sizable amount of bulk on its bones. It's also a water type that doesn't mind being in a sun team because Hydro Steam is actually boosted by sun type damage, and it is one of the few water types that does not get access to an ice type move. It instead gets access to Flamethrower. It's also a dragon type, giving it a lot of fun little toolkits to go in with some nice resistances. You know, it can go be very speedy if, say, Photosynthesis gets activated by Booster Energy, or it can be very specially aggressive with Booster Special Attack stat. Can very easily flip the script in a lot of other dragon types, and I really look forward to having a lot of fun with this thing. I mostly picked it at first because I legitimately just don't want to fight this thing because it terrifies me. But, you know, as Smash Mouth says, you might as well be walking on the sun, because our second pick was Torkoal. I actually rolled around a lot in my head whether this thing was going to be Ninetales or Torkoal as my Sunsetter, because I decided we're going full tilt sun team. To quote Doc Ock, "The power of the sun in the palm of my hand" is the team plan. Torkoal is a phenomenally bulky defensive Pokemon. With access to Drought, it sets Sun, can hit really hard with things like Sun Boosted Overheat, Sun Boosted Flamethrower, Lava Plume for burns, Scorching Sands, Earth Power, not Earthquake. Also has access to Stealth Rock and Rapid Spin for Entry Hazard and Entry Hazard removal. Fantastic. I don't really need to go for Heat Rock for extra sun, so I can just go slap the Heavy Duty Boots on it. It can be offensive, it can be defensive. Again, Solar Beam to punish Water, Rock, and Ground types. Also get some fun other status tools, which I look forward to employing to the full capacity. And with Body Press, can even hit things that are trying to come in and specially wall it. It has been a long time since I last ran a Sun team, the last being all the way back at the end of Sword and Shield in Series 12, with my Groudon Charizard team, Sunburn with Shade. It's been a long time, and time to bask in the light. For our third pick, this is a Pokemon I legitimately did not expect to be around at the end of round 3. Dapper Snapper, the person that I was also drafting having help with, also didn't think it was gonna be around until the end of round 3. And yet it still was, with Blaziken. This is a fantastic mixed attacker. Great physical attack at 120, great special attack at 110. While not the greatest in the world, it's still quite competent, and it's something that will need to be taken into account for week in, week out by every other team, because even though it's, say, special fighting moves are not the greatest, I believe it only gets Aura Sphere, Vacuum Wave, and Focus Miss, it's still enough to be competent. I mean, you have the Nuclear Overheat in Sun from the Fire Special end, and the absolutely brutal bone-breaking physical close combat on the, of course, physical end. It has two extremely devastating stab options for either mode of attack, and even maybe some resistance aren't going to want to be facing those fire-type moves. Again, Solar Beam access for some added fun, possibly, say, not Brave Bird, like Acrobatics for some things. There's a lot of stuff that Blaziken can do, and it also is pretty zippy. Also some fun coverage moves like Thunder Punch. I always love seeing fire types with Thunder Punch, just to kind of laugh, not really laugh at water types, but again, means of punishing water types and not making them want to come in against me is always a wonderful, wonderful thing to have. Also, as a fire type, it is not weak to stealth rocks, meaning it can actually come in against them without needing to worry too heavily about the heavy-duty boots, and instead opting for just a better item, maybe something like the Life Orb. Not really too familiar with Blaziken itself. I actually have a very long and convoluted history with this Pokemon itself, but we're gonna see why Colonel Sanders puts the fear in everything. For our fourth pick, which you got really quite after our Blaziken pick, we went with another speedy Pokemon for a Sun team in Venusaur. Not typically known as a speedy Pokemon, it has Chlorophyll access under Sun for some extra kick. Not the greatest special attacker or special defender, only 100 in both stats doesn't seem too impressive. However, it does have access to that Chlorophyll ability, meaning I don't really need to run a speed boosting nature. I can afford to go modest or physically or especially defensive for nature week in, week out. Very rarely will I need to be running a speed boosting nature on this thing, unless it is to outpace something like an extremely fast Scarf user. Like, probably like 110 Scarfers are the only thing that this thing will get outsped by, which puts a bit of a premium on pressure on the opposing team in terms of bench pressure, which is always a good thing. And as a grounded poison, it can get rid of toxic spikes, something that I have grossly underestimated in previous draft leagues that I am now working on correcting. As a grass type on a Sun team, it slots in perfectly, rounding out my grass, fire, water core, helping me to threaten those water, rock, and ground types that like to threaten my fire types. It also, again, resists those water types, and pairs well with the fire type moves in the fire types with Sun in enabling Solar Beam. This is a ridiculously powerful move that, because of the Sun, I can actually use on my grass type. Rarely I use a move like this, and it offers me a bit of the same power as a move like Leaf Storm without the associated cost. Also helps put a bit of a focus on, well, maybe the other side is going to need to bring in some sort of weather changing capability to counter out something like that. However, it also gets access to pretty dangerous moves, and not just in Sludge Bomb for hitting fairy types, but also Weather Ball itself to blast, various steel types with Weather Ball Fire, and Earth Power for blasting steel types. Once again, not a whole lot really wants to come in on Venusaur. It could also be a bit of a support status set with various powder moves, and just sustain with something like Synthesis under Sun. So it, again, has a whole lot of different modes it can go in, possibly go Toxic Spikes, a lot of fun things it can do. Looking forward to seeing it. This was also the first Pokemon I ever picked, ever. My first Pokemon game was actually Leaf Green. I don't really like bringing this up too often, as not a big fan of Kanto, but, Venusaur was the first Pokemon I ever picked. Let's see how it goes. P-Ball. Round 5, when it came back to us after that very long delay, we went for the pink terror of the universe. No, not Kirby, but Screamtail. I picked Wigglytuff in a previous draft league. Never used it once. And I am entirely wholly unfamiliar with how Screamtail operates beyond things like Wish Passing and its access to a whole bunch of very weird and janky status moves, which is going to be really fun. I do know that this thing is a defensive behemoth with incredibly high speed. And of course, as a fairy type, it will slot in very well at forming a second part of a Fairy Dragon Steel core that was started with Walking Wake. A very defensive, very annoying fairy that works well on a Sun team, gets access to moves like Stealth Rocks, gets access to moves like Encore, Thunder Wave. It's gonna be really fun. Gets a couple of boosting options like, say, Calm Mind or Bulk Up. Don't really see it doing too much offensive damage here, but it's always something that can be pretty much used for a little bit of coverage options and surprise things. It gets a bit of a weird coverage options, things like Thunderbolt and Flamethrower. Again, only a 65 in both of its offensive stats, not too impressive, but with its absolutely titanic bulk and access to something, say, like Leftovers, giving it passive recovery, not really something you want to scoff at, especially when the Pink Terror has another member of the family that likes stalling stuff out. I am entirely unfamiliar with this thing, and I hope I can actually use Screamtail quite well. For our 6th pick, this is a Pokemon that I have never used myself, but something I am very well acquainted with the archetype. I do love me some hyper-aggressive tactics, and that is what Sandy Shocks does well. Very high speed, all things considered, with a very good 121 special attack stat, Electric Ground for fantastic coverage in its stabs for neutral damage. Its coverage move pool might be pretty garbage, consisting of basically Power Gem, Flash Cannon, and Tri-Attack, but it gets a couple of fun status moves, things like Spikes and Stealth Rock itself, and also Magnet Rise, giving it immunity to ground-type moves. It is a fairly straightforward beat stick, and that is what I love. It is basic, it is dumb, it is hit things hard until they stop moving. With its great speed naturally, it can be a potential speed booster with photosynthesis, or it can be a special attack blitzer. Also has access to Discharge, Volt Switch, Thunderbolt, a lot of fun things it can do. And by a lot of fun things it can do, I mean it blasts things really, really freaking hard. It's got so many ways of blasting things in the face. I like it. The fact I was able to draft a round 7 Scizor, I think, is a crime in some way, shape, or form. This thing lasted until the end of round 7, alright? Just keep that in mind. Defog, Technician Priority Bullet Punch, Technician Dual Wing Beat, Technician Bug Bite, Trailblaze, Close Combat, Knock Off. Scizor is a Pokemon that needs no introduction, but we're doing one anyway because I really like this thing. It also fits very well on my team with the very specially weighted nature of everything so far. Walk and Wake, Torkoal, Venusaur, Sandy Shocks. Really the only physical attacker we've got so far is that Blaziken, who really is a part-timer. Scizor is a great, brutal physical attacker. With its priority, it doesn't really mind being too slow, but again, Trailblaze with Technician can punish a couple of things. It's a bit weird using a Scizor on a Sun team, considering it is deathly allergic to fire. Ideally, you'd want something like this on a Rain team, but I think it's going to actually do quite well, potentially to reap any benefits of opposing grass types trying to take advantage of my Sun team, though, considering all the firepower the team is packing, I don't think a whole lot of grass types are going to want to come into the team anyway. It's mostly there to deal with things such as rock types that kind of want to come in and set up some hazards against me, and just again, bullet punch its way through a whole lot of Pokemon that naturally outspeed it. I am very familiar with how Scizor works. Again, my specialty is hyper offense attack tactics. And Scizor, absolutely love this thing. The Red Terror is going to rip and tear. Our round 8 pick was an absolute snipe and frickin' steal with the discount Fluttermane. We got Mismagius. At the very least, 2 people got sniped with this pick, and I am so glad I drafted this thing when I did. I probably could have drafted it a round sooner, but I really wanted that Scizor. Mismagius is a fairly unassuming Pokemon at first glance, but in a low-tier Terra format like we are in, a 6-point Terra Captain with 105 in special attack, special defense, and speed, and Levitate is incredibly valuable. Terra Ghost, Terra Fairy, and Terra Fighting are the ones I decided to go for this thing. Again, it is discount Fluttermane for a reason. It also does get access to Mystical Fire, so it actually can do a bit of fun stuff on a Sun team. Levitate, it is immune to ground, pairs well with a couple of Pokemon on my team. It is immune to fighting, which pairs well with a couple of Pokemon on the team. All around, this thing offers a whole lot of benefits, and Ghost moves are largely unresisted. Of the things that do resist it, they're weak to Fairy and they're weak to fighting, which is part of the reason I picked those typings, because it's not like a lot of stuff wants to come into a Mismagius, and it's going to be a constant guessing game. Am I going to go full brute force with Ghost Shadow Ball every turn, or am I maybe going to go Hex with some Will-O-Wisp shenanigans? But I do have a whole bunch of status users on my team. Things like Screamtail can go for Thunder Wave, Venusaur can spread some poisons, everything else basically can start spreading burns or paralysis with Sandy Shocks. And again, Hex damage and Shadow Ball damage, which one's it going to be? Or, you're going to bring in your normal type? Alright, that's fine. I'm going to go Terra Fighting. I'm going to blast you with Terra Fighting Terra Blasts. A lot of things Mismagius can do. It is very versatile despite being a seemingly one-note Pokemon. Of all things, we picked an Ice-Water type for a Sun team. At only 2 points, Dugong might seem the most filler Pokemon on the team, as I did need a 2-point Pokemon to round out my Terra pick. Well, not Terra Captain picks, but to round out my points so I can get my next Terra Captain. However, Dugong does actually fill a lot of critical roles on the team despite its very unimpressive stats, and I have never been shy about the fact I am not a big fan of Dugong. It is fairly unimpressive at only 90 HP and 95 special defense, which are its best stats, 70 in both offenses and speed, and only an 80 for physical defense. This is not very impressive. It doesn't hit very hard. It gets hit pretty hard because its defenses are kind of terrible. However, there are two big things this thing gets, other than the fact that it's a good budget pick. Thick Fat, which protects my Scizor from a lot of those fire-type moves, also protects Venusaur from the fire-type moves, which also helps protect me from ice-type moves onto Walking Wake, especially Freeze Dry. Well, Freeze Dry on Walking Wake is the only move, and ice-type moves onto the Venusaur. Despite being the lowest point pick of our entire team, this is a very valuable Pokemon because it provides that Thick Fat benefit. It also provides a slow pivot in Flip Turn, as opposed to the fast pivot Flip Turn in Walking Wake, and possibly Ice Shard for a little bit of priority damage. It also gets access to Weather Ball, so it can actually use a fire-type move to start slapping grass types and surprising them when coming in. Now, yes, ice-type moves are generally a bit better for hitting those. However, in Sun, can be a bit more fun to hit things with. Ensures that things generally might not want to come into it and don't want to take that risk. Again, largely unimpressive in most cases, and I definitely have laid into Dugong a lot on its unimpressive nature, but maybe it can change my mind this time. And our last pick at number 10, we have our final Terra Captain, and there's a very good reason I mentioned my team Sunburn with Shade. We went with Charizard for our final Terra Captain, with Terra Fire, Terra Grass, and Terra Ground. This thing is an unmitigated obliterator. Terra Fire, Solar Power, Sun boosted, possibly Life Orb Flamethrowers. Just imagine that. Or Terra Grass, Solar Power, turn 1 Solar Beams. The two other Terra types are there for defensive benefits, helping me against water types with the grass, helping me against rock with the ground, and both of them doing well against electric types. It is a constant guessing game of what is it going to go, because all three are basically applicable at all times. One offers absolutely absurd lean-in damage that can literally melt through defenses and resistances, while the other nail those defenses and those resistances with super effective hits. This thing will probably have no switch-ins. I don't even need to go Life Orb in most cases. I could just slap a Scarf on it and just keep blasting things with this thing. And if I'm worried about not being able to reliably get Sun, I can just go Terra Blast, Terra Grass on this thing instead of Solar Beam. I had considered partially going Terra Flying because its flying type moves are generally not the greatest. Air Slash is only okay at best, and I do not want to rely on Hurricane for misses, especially in a Sun team where its accuracy is cut in half. But as an immunity to ground, it is a cripplingly weak Pokemon to Stealth Rocks, so yes, might need to go for Heavy Duty Boots on it. But Charizard's really not meant to be sticking around for a long time. This thing is meant to go in, hit things for extremely high powered damage, and then finish the fight early. Solar Power Rack Up, especially a Solar Power Life Orb Rack Up, isn't really meant to be a worry, because this thing is meant to destroy things before it gets to be a problem. I have a very long and complicated history with this Pokemon, something that will probably get its own video at some point, and I am very much looking forward to using Charizard on my team this season. That is all for your New York metas. If you haven't done so already and made it this far into the video, thank you very much. Do not forget to subscribe for more. Check out our secondary channel, Max Allo. We're doing a whole bunch of Godzilla-related content on there. One of our last draft leagues, we actually made an entire Godzilla-focused draft team. And check out the rest of the coaches. Next week we go fight the Buffalo Drills. It's gonna be fun. Rock and roller.